Hello again. If there is one thing which all governments love, it is a good crisis. For one thing, when there is no crisis or emergency going on, people often tend to ask awkward questions such as, why are prices rising so fast and my wages are not going up to keep pace with them? Or, does this government actually have a way of controlling immigration? A lot of the time, governments have no answers to such questions because they are so useless and ineffective. This makes them look bad, of course, and voters might remember this at the next election. That's why a crisis is always welcome, because it gives politicians a chance to say something along the lines of, stop worrying about those trivial concerns of yours and face the upcoming problem of terrorism or a pandemic, potential world war, that sort of thing. By the by, some viewers might have been surprised that the terrible threat to Britain of Islamic terrorism ended abruptly a couple of years ago in April 2020. Up until that time, it had been waved in front of us pretty well the whole time as something upon which we needed to focus our minds. We were told the terrorism threat was severe, imminent, whatever it might have been that particular day. This gag, of course, was used shamelessly by Theresa May a couple of weeks before the 2017 election, when she was sinking fast in the opinion polls. So she mobilised troops and brought them onto the streets to guard London against the threat of Muslim terrorists. She thought, of course, that if people saw soldiers patrolling outside the Houses of Parliament, it would make her look like some kind of wartime Prime Minister, and the supposed threat would make everybody vote for her. Alas, in a rare outbreak of common sense, the electorate instead came close to turning her out of office. For 20 years, the Islamist terrorist menace has been waved at us as a way of scaring us. But then along came COVID and hey presto, nobody needed the threat of terrorism anymore. It was dropped at once and we've not heard of it for the last couple of years. COVID was the perfect emergency and we all pulled together, and in Britain everybody supported the government, even when they were doing away with their civil rights and freedom wholesale. What a wonderful crisis that was for the government. Even the parliamentary opposition was supporting them. Still, all good things come to an end, and by this February it was obvious that the COVID business was looking threadbare and running out of steam. It was terrible for the governments in both Britain and America, for death rates were falling below average, and what was worse, people were asking those awkward questions again. In Britain they were asking things like, if COVID was so dangerous, how come nobody in Downing Street was taking the supposed threat seriously? In America, Biden and his vice president were at rock bottom in the polls. This was not good. Another emergency was desperately needed, and luckily for both Joe Biden and Boris Johnson, they managed to come up with a new one, the threat of a world war. But wait, I hear you cry. Boris Johnson and Joe Biden did not invent the invasion of Ukraine, did they? That is surely a real crisis affecting us all, not a stunt by the British and American governments. In fact, it is a stunt by those governments. Thinking about the invasion of Ukraine, we might ask ourselves now why there is so much of a great fuss about this war, one which has nothing to do with us and doesn't really affect us. Why are we in such an uproar about it? Well, surely it's because it's in Europe and we're not used to such things in Europe. Doesn't it threaten the stability of Europe? Chechnya is also in Europe. Anybody remember the first Chechen War in 1994 and 1995 when Russia invaded Chechnya and the slaughter was incredible? Of course not. Do we remember the second Chechen War in 1997? The destruction of Chechnya's largest city? No, we don't, because we in Britain and America largely ignored it. what about the Russian invasion of Georgia, another European country, in 2008? Can any viewer say anything about the Russian invasion of Georgia? Hand on heart, do any viewers even remember it? Of course they don't. During the invasion of Georgia and Chechnya, Britain and America were not in any particular need of a new crisis. Now, though, both the Biden administration in America and Boris Johnson's government found themselves sinking fast in the opinion polls and felt that noticing a European war would be a smart move. This is why there is an outcry about Ukraine of the kind that we did not hear when the Russians were bombing Chechnya and Georgia. It is above all else a useful emergency, and as long as it continues, everybody will forget what truly awful leaders they have in both Johnson and Biden. We can forget about inflation, illegal immigrants, unemployment and everything else that Americans and British seem unable to get a grip on, and instead focus our concerns upon a country which is thousands of miles away. I have been described in the comments on this channel when I talk about Ukraine as being hard-hearted and uncaring, but I would be interested to know how much attention those making those remarks actually paid to the Russian wars in Chechnya and Georgia. We are being played for fools by our government again. If I draw attention to this scam, I'm not sure that it makes me a cruel and heartless person.